So sometimes when you're cutting down trees, things don't go right. And I've done a couple videos showing you where I did some things where the tree was trapped and didn't fall the way we wanted. But sometimes storms and old rotten trees fall down and you get a mishmash of stuff. So I thought I'd take this opportunity, this mess of logs. We've got a dead one that fell down on top of a live tree, so it's bent and under tension. We've got a pine tree that came down in the storm. It hit another oak tree that's live and is holding it under tension, and it's all in the way of the fire break. So how do you go and safely cut all this down? Well, you definitely want to keep safety in mind, and I was talking with my friend Ray, and he had seen my video where, hey, you turned your back on that tree that was leaning and it could have fallen on you. And we talked about, you know, you always got to be safe, and I like to keep the movie The Final Destination. I don't know if you remember those from when you were a kid. I think they still make those movies, where every conceivable accident could take place. So when you're working in the woods, especially with chainsaws, you need to kind of have that final destination thought in your head. If something can go wrong, it will. So what I'm going to try and go through is how do I kind of troubleshoot this kind of a mess and start cutting things down. Because you might think, well, I'm going to get rid of that live tree right away. That's actually probably the last thing I'm going to cut, because it's under a lot of pressure from this dead tree. So let's start to dissect this and figure out how do we go from this mess to a clear fire break trail safely. No final destinations for me. I want to keep all my fingers and I want to stay alive. So let's start to dissect this and see how we get all this out of here. The first thing I like to do in a situation like this where it's a mess is actually, as much as possible, clear up my working space. So there's a lot of dead branches on the ground. There's limbs that are just sticking up in the air that if the tree fell, it's going to hit me. So what I like to do is I'll cut a bunch of these freestanding limbs off. I'll clean up this brush. I'll cut up some of these branches that are sticking out in the air that if the tree came down, the branch would hit me. So I'll just clean this up under time lapse, and then we'll get ready to look at it in more detail.
So here I'm just trying to get rid of the tripping hazards, you know, get the stuff off the ground. If there's branches that are sticking out in midair that aren't bearing any weight, they're not tangled up in other things, you know, just get them cut off. It reduces the weight of the log, it reduces the odds of you tripping on it, or if the tree falls, it catching you.
Okay, I'm going to talk through some of my thoughts on what's going on here. We've got this tree that is pinned down by the pine tree. We've got this dead tree that's laying on top of another live oak tree, and it's pinned down and ready to spring. But this dead tree is pretty big. I mean, at this halfway point, that is probably about 10 inches in diameter. So here's my thought. This pine tree, by the time it gets to the dead tree, is only an inch or two in diameter. So I think the safest thing to do first is to get this pine tree out of the way. So let's try that. So my biggest hazard here is really just this pine tree falling on me. The dead tree can't reach me to here. This springy oak that's pinned down, it's not gonna fall on me. So I think I'm pretty safe in getting this out of here. And so what I've shown sometimes in the past is what I call a ladder cut, where the tension on this log is pushing down. So if I cut underneath it, the log is going to flex open like this. It won't pinch the saw, and it's a fairly safe way to cut it. And right here is about 4 inches in diameter, maybe 5. So that'll leave a fairly light part of the tree that way. And I think I could probably, you know, pull it off by hand. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut it here. And again, I'm going to cut it from underneath because the tree wants to fall down, and that'll open up the cut. So I'll just cut just a teeny bit of it. Sometimes I'll do the whole thing from underneath. Sometimes I will cut just a on the top. And you just put it underneath. Oh, and see, it's so hung up in the tree it didn't come loose. And there we go. So now the trick is to get the rest of this off the dead tree. I don't know how heavy. Yeah, it's kind of stuck, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut some of these loose branches out of the way. It's lighter now, so we'll see if I can just lift it off now. Well, it looks like maybe I can drag it off. All right, now I would not want to cut this up underneath this dead stuff, so I'm going to just drag it up the hill a little bit. I'll cut it up and then we'll start again. Okay, now that some more of the debris is out of the way, you can really start to see how dangerous this was. So we've got this oak tree pinned down by the dead tree where the limb is cracked and rotten, so it's already starting to give way. Would probably start to fall this way. But there's a limb off this dead trunk caught up in that pine tree over there. So maybe that'll hold it a little bit. It certainly is going to stop this tree from being able to go that way. Then lastly, we've got this trunk coming down, not bearing any weight at the moment, but as it comes down, it's going to pop and probably shoot some sticks out. So we got quite a mess to finish here. I think, from what I can tell, probably my next safest steps are to try and take some of this weight off this dead tree by cutting off some of those limbs that are actually farther down the trunk, and I might actually cut it further into the woods. So let's do time lapse. We'll take off some of the weight off the rotten tree.
So as I'm working here, I'm always reassessing. Did I assess something wrong? Don't be afraid to stop and rethink.
So I was taking some of the weight off this, and I'm looking at all these trees that this rotten one's got trapped. It's got yet another oak tree pinned with this limb. Now, this is pretty solid. It's on the far side of this oak tree. And so what I believe is if I cut this limb, it might fall, but it can only fall that way. It can't fall back at me because this tree is going to block it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut this limb up high so that it falls away, and then I'm going to try cutting it closer to this oak tree to see if the tree gets released and goes that way. Again, think Final Destination. How could this go wrong? The tree could fall this way. I've got it pinned in by a tree on that side. It's pinned by this oak tree on this side. So the odds of it rolling back on me are very low. Normally I like to be on the uphill side of the tree, but in this case the downhill side is actually safer. So let's see, let's first try and get rid of this limb. All right, let's put that out of the way. That's good. I still can't move it. Let's see if I can. And I can, and it didn't move. And I still can't budge it. Can I get the oak tree out of the way? I cannot. Oh, I can. There we go. So now we have a better idea what we're dealing with. At least this oak tree is no longer under tension. but we got a lot of mass in this. This is a really heavy log. So, more decisions to make. What do we do? I think we got to reassess. Okay, what can we do here? We're leaned against that oak tree where we cut before. We're on top of this oak tree, pinned in by a downward branch off the main rotten tree, so it's not coming this way at all. We've got a couple of vertical things that if the tree came down might hit me in the head. I don't think I really want to cut anywhere near here. If I had my pole saw, which, gosh, you just never can have everything with you, can you? But if I had my pole saw, I might try cutting some of the stuff up in the air to see if it would come down like where this limb is cracking. But this thing really isn't budging. I don't think that's going to help me. I think what's going to help me is by getting some of the weight off of it. So I think if I cut close to where we were before, cutting this trunk, it's going to want to go down. Maybe this top part is going to go up. I don't know. We'll have to look at it. But I think cutting there is going to be our best next option. So this rotten tree can only go down. It can't come towards me because this 4-inch oak is in the way. I think when I cut it, this part of the log is going to want to go down, which would, when it goes like that, what are we talking about, safety? Put the saw on the ground. So I think this part of the log is still going to want to go down, so the log will open like this. So I think if we cut part way at the top, somewhere around here, then cut from underneath, it's going to open like this, and it won't pinch the saw. So let's give that a try. All right. My problem here is I can't undercut it very easily, but we're going to try. Better. Which way is it going? Oh yeah, it's definitely going down to go that way. I think I can safely cut from that side. Hey, partway there. Now, the good news is a large part of the mass is free. The bad news is, look at how it's in motion, but at least it's not as heavy as it was before. So now, got more decisions to make. Well, this is turning into one of the ugliest tree cuttings ever, but that's what storm damage does. It gives you less than favorable conditions. The oak tree that's holding this back is still under a lot of pressure. We don't want to cut this. I think if I did cut it, it's going to snap and this would come down. But I'm very reluctant to do that because it's very unpredictable. What I kind of want to do here is that this tree is kind of pinned in by this very solid branch, this one here riding the oak tree. So what I think I can do is cut off a little more weight here where it might then tip over. And I think the safest place to cut this weight off the back end is standing here. So let's take that off. Let's make sure our footpath is clear. And let's take this off and see what see what that leaves us with. And again, because this end is suspended in the air, it's going to break in this direction, so I can cut from the top. It won't pinch my saw. Almost free. Definitely taking a lot of weight off this, but still not at a point where I could probably pull it with the UTV to get it off this tree. It's still pretty pinned in there. So, what do? We take off a little more weight. All right, a little better. Let's clean this up. Can I pull this down now, maybe? Maybe. It still pinned in. Let me see if I can push it from the other side. I could rotate it. Nope. There we go. So we're getting a little more down onto the ground. That's the good news. Oh, the oak tree over there just came free. There we go. All right, we've got everything down to the ground now safely, just knocked over the camera. But all 10 fingers are intact. So we got the thing down to the ground. A little bit of hang up, but now I'll just cut it up and our path is clear. So I'll put it in time lapse. Thanks for watching. Everything we used is in the affiliate links in the description. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you later.